Government Unit 4. This video is all about the connection between media and politics. So first, let's define what the media is. The media is all the different ways people can store and communicate information, such as radio, TV, paintings, podcasts, magazines, and any other way that you can communicate to someone else with. In particular, we're going to be focusing on the news media. The news media is any media whose purpose is strictly to inform people of factual information. This does include editorial, which are important for understanding the facts because even though they're clearly opinion articles, they do provide context, understanding for the information presented in the news articles, so that way you understand why you should care or how they might affect things in a good and or positive way. But while you're reading these editorials, and even when you're writing just the straight news stories, you need to be looking out for bias. Bias is when someone's opinion affects the facts in ways that are not always so clear. There's three different examples that we're going to go over. The first is when you give more favorable more favorable opinion to one candidate or issue over the other. Another example of bias is when you allow one candidate to have a lot more time in your articles, on your TV program, on your radio show than you give to other candidates or issues. And the other type of bias that can creep up is when you highlight all the negative or mostly negative stories on one issue or one candidate, and then on another candidate, maybe you only focus on the good issues and ignore most of the bad things that that individual has done or the bad consequences of voting for that issue. And the third type of bias is the kind of bias that makes someone highlight mostly negative stories for one candidate or issue, and then for the opposing candidate or issue, only covering the good side and just ignoring the downsides. Now, bias can lead to lies or false information, but that's only one small way bias can show up. Mostly bias is trying to make one side look better over the other, but without necessarily lying, just leaving out or ignoring parts of the opposition. One of the more controversial ways in which you'll see bias is campaign ads. In particular, negative campaign ads, also known as mudslinging, are ads that attack an opponent rather than advertise for yourself. So, for example, instead of saying, this is my plan and this is what I'm going to do, instead a candidate or a campaign might make ads that just say what's so bad about the other person, maybe not even talking about themselves, just mudslinging, attacking the opponent. Now, when people are polled, that means surveyed, every single time, majority of people say they hate these ads. They're obnoxious. They get tired seeing all the negativity all the time. But candidates and their campaigns do it anyway because they work. Time and again, it proves that no matter how much people hate these ads, they hear them and it does affect their opinions. It affects the way they vote. So despite their unpopularity, they still get aired in every single election. Now, another way in which the media affects politics is through radio talk show hosts. Radio talk show hosts, and not just the ones on the AM radio, but things on like XM radio and Sirius too. Podcasts actually count into this category, is where hosts admit that their stories are affected by their own opinions. They admit they are trying to get you to believe what they believe. They're trying to convince you that their opinion of how the facts should be interpreted is correct. Now, hopefully they're not lying. They still might be telling truth, but they're trying to get across their opinions on the truth. Now, the most popular and most effective form of media is visual media. That's any kind of media that has visuals, because people like to see pictures. This includes TV and definitely social media, like your Facebooks and your Twitters and your Snapchats. Now, visual media over the last half century has had a massive impact, has greatly affected the way in which candidates run for office, and even which candidates even have a shot anymore. Because if you're going to have a successful campaign to win office, especially at a high level like president or senator, there's a number of things that have to be true about you. If you don't have the 3 things I'm about to list, you have almost zero chance of becoming elected. It's possible to overcome them, but it's just so rare nowadays. Those 3 things are: you must be good looking. Now, you don't have to be super good looking. You don't have to be a movie star, although that helps. But there's kind of a minimum level of attractiveness you have to meet. If you're below that level of attractiveness, unfortunately, you're not going to look very good on TV, and people are going to judge you that way. It could be as simple as just not shaving. Now, you might have great ideas, but it doesn't matter. You don't look good for the camera, you can't win. You have to have a very attractive personality. This has pretty much always been true, but it's even more true because so many more people are going to see your personality, because you'll get to see it without having to actually stand next to the man or woman because of TV and social media. And finally, you have to look comfortable in front of the camera. You have to act like you are the president or the mayor or the governor or whatever office you're running for already. If you don't have those 3 things, your opinions, your ideas almost don't matter if you want to win office. And that's the effect of social media, visual media, TV news on who can and cannot successfully run for office. In fact, these 3 things are so important. Anybody who's going to run for office, especially at a higher level like presidents and Congress, they're going to hire someone known as a press secretary. That person's sole job is to make sure that candidate looks as good as possible in the media. They control damage when bad news breaks on the individual, and making sure that when the candidate is doing something good or important, that the news doesn't miss it, that it's all over the media. After someone wins an election, they'll keep that person in their staff because, again, if the media starts to go bad on them, that's going to affect their ability to do their job even after they've won the election. And one of the tools that a press secretary will use to decide how to control the media, how to shape everybody's opinion of the candidate they work for, is through the use of polls. Polls are surveys done over the phone, online, in person, that measure what people think about the candidate. People are also known as the electorate, the people that are going to elect their candidate. For example, anybody under 18 is not the electorate because they can't vote. Based on how the polls go is how press secretaries know how their candidate looks to people. Is he popular? Is he unpopular? Should he go in one direction or another? Should he support this issue or vote against another issue? Polls is how secretaries find out which way their candidate should go and how they should advise their candidate. And that's it. This is another huge topic that people turn careers into. That's what the press secretary thing was all about. But this is enough to at least get your feet wet and give you a general idea of how important the media is on politics. Thank you, and if you have any questions in class, let me know.